And for the next session, which is a panel discussion, I welcome on the stage Mr. Narendra Verma, Technical Advisor, Sustainable Urban Mobility at GIZ. So Narendra is a seasoned transport planner with over 8 years of experience in sustainable urban mobility. He currently works with GIZ on bilateral technical cooperation project on sustainable urban mobility in India. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him. So the topic of the panel discussion is connected system, resilient outcomes, linking mobility, energy, and climate action through shared digital infrastructures.
Hello everybody, good afternoon to all. I'm Narendra Verma and I represent GIZ here. And we are happy that we are co-organizing this with CDPG, this event. And I'm excited to be part of this session. And let me just introduce the speakers, the panelists for this session, and call them one by one. So the first in the list is Mr. Abhay Sharma. So I would like to invite him to the panel. So Mr. Abhay Sharma is Chief Technology Officer. Please. And he is VP of Development for the IODX program at IISc. And he brings technical expertise leading to the architecture and development of IODX, which is an open source platform for sharing and consuming data. So a round of applause for Mr. Abhay Sharma. Next, we have Professor and Dr. Vijay Kovvali. Yeah, so Dr. Vijay Kovvali is currently a research professor at CiSTUP, which is the Center for Infrastructure, Sustainable Transport and Urban Planning at IISc. And prior to this, he's worked with IIT Delhi, and he brings over 25 years of industry experience. So thank you, Professor, for joining us again. And next, I would like to invite Mr. Deepak Krishnan. He is Deputy Director for WRI's India Energy Program, and he leads the work on clean energy initiatives at WRI. So welcome him to the panel as well. And last, I would like to invite Ms. Cornelia. So she heads the EASE project at GIZ. So EASE project is enabling accessible, sustainable, and equitable mobility. And she's a sociologist and an urban planner by profession. And she brings in more than 3 decades of experience in the international cooperation sector. So let me first start by welcoming all the panelists here in the session. So as you can see, our session is connected systems and resilient outcomes. So and we'll be talking about the mobility sector in specific, and we'll be talking about the shared digital infrastructure and how it can help our cities in moving from a fragmented ecosystem towards an inclusive and connected ecosystem. But before we start, probably I'll just give you a background about the mobility sector in India, and then I can go about asking questions to each of our panelists. So if you look at the mobility sector in India, what you will see is that every city, right? Every city has their own ecosystem of providing these services, right? You have STUs, you have metro companies. So if you closely look into it, what you will see is that institutional fragmentation, right? And that probably causes the inefficiency in the system. Now, whether or not DPI can solve institutional fragmentation, that is something that that we will discuss. But for sure, it makes the system more efficient, right? From a consumer's perspective, they are able to extract a lot of value from these services. So on that note, probably my first question will be to Mr. Abhay Sharma. He's been working with IDX for a long time now, and maybe he can help us define the problem statement, right? Like, what are the issues that fragmentation in an industry like transport and mobility can create, and what IDX brings to the table, and how can IDX help solve some of these issues. So maybe I'll hand it over to Mr. Abhay Sharma to lead us and start the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Narendra. Yeah. So I think you have already mentioned a little bit about fragmentation and silos, and I think fragmentation and silos also exist on multiple layers. I think data exchanges that we do solve it at certain level, but I think there are other difficulties that are also there. And I think currently, like with respect to mobility, I think we have seen on the field, I think these are typical inconsistencies. We have seen it, I think, we have seen it with the data, but then in general, if you see, if you do literature survey, also you will find very similar things. So these are, I will first maybe say the problem, then we can see how we can try to get it. So try to solve some of these. So I think one of the things is there are inconsistencies in the data, even if you agree to it. So first of all, let's say a few years back, we were grappling with the fact that people are not using common standards. But I think like the data from one city, we already know, like data from like Pune was not coming in GTFS format, but somewhere else we'll get it in GTFS format. But I think over the time, we have seen that problem has reduced. I think people are beginning to accept, let's say, a popular standard. But the problem does not stop there. I think the problem is the data that comes with that standard itself can be an issue. So for example, there's a lot of gap between, say, static feed and the real-time feed, right? So you write something, the routes change, right? Or dynamic routes happen, or sometimes the road changes. The thing does not reflect back into the static route, or whatever is there in the static route does not come back into the real time. So that is one problem. So the second problem is inconsistencies in the real-time feed itself. So there are many mandatory and there are many optional attributes. Now the optional attributes, people fill in whatever, like, again, so that's what I meant, that is where I think fragmentation on some kind of a guideline level should be there, that there should be some kind of an understanding that these are the kind of attributes that should come, and these are the type of, say, trip updates have to happen at this frequency. So that is also very important to do. So I think that is another issues that we have. So I think that that is basically coming because there is an inconsistency in the processes. There is no understanding in the process. The people who are feeding in data, the processes are sometimes manual. Even if it is automated, it is not standard across different. So the data that is coming from different cities, we are unable to compare them because of these kind of issues. I think in one more issue which can be thought about is the lack of standards again. I think although there is some movement in that, is that so a lot of these things when we talk about, see, as an exchange, we think still more from the operator's point of view, and from the consumer point of view. And I think that is what GTFS philosophy and principle is also, right? Like, it's more consumer facing. It's mainly meant for consumers. And what about the operational part? So it's almost like a blind spot of GTFS, right? The operational side, like there is a fleet management, there's a crew management. Then what happens if there are accidents? So a lot of such things which are very, very central to solving this problem, right? Solving this overall problem. I think in the transport that we are seeing, that has to be solved if we also have standardization in the operator side. I think some of these are beginning to be seen, like some standards are being developed now, but again, till the time there's a clear winner, there's going to be inconsistent or whatever. There's going to be a fragmentation in the standard space. But yeah, I think standardization is the way to go. Standardization or accepting, first of all, a well-established standard would be a good thing. And second would be, I think, the same thinking needs to progress towards, as I said, operational side as well as towards the processes. And then I think even use case templates. There should be use case templates across all the cities so that everybody doesn't come up with their own set of principles, their own set of applications to be run. So I think these are some of the things I think.
So basically what I get from your point of view is the lack of standardization, right, across the mobility sector, especially services. Now, maybe I'll take this point and I'll move on to professor who has been in academia, and academia also has I feel personally has a lot of role to play when it comes to guiding the institutions. So, Professor, what cities are doing? So, lack of standardization is one problem, right? For example, adopting GTFS standards. GTFS has been there since a long time, right? I mean, it was there probably in 2002 or 2003. It started back in US, and then now I think last decade or so, we have been trying to adopt it, right? But still, we are a long way to go because at GIZ also we are working with cities, and you know it's very difficult at times when you go to cities and just tell them that your schedules need to be converted into GTFS. Whether he was also talking about there is static and there is real time feed that is required. Now, from your perspective, how do you think cities are they willing to adopt to these new standards? What's the way forward if cities have to kind of do this standardization? Whether government is doing enough to push us towards standardizing these formats?
So my background is actually industry. Okay, I've been in the academia for the last 3 years, and I've done a multiple ITS projects. So most of the things that had failed, we know why they failed, and there are a few challenges, and it's easy to talk about the challenges. One of the easiest one to talk about is its data shows your faults. Okay, so government tries to shy away from data if you don't want to show your faults, right? And that has been a big challenge. And everywhere we are seeing that somebody's pushing, and in almost all our RFPs we wrote GTFS standard, but there's no testing of it, right? Is it really GTFS or not? Now that we are seeing that the fact that we have BMTC data is because the transport secretary who is IIS officer pushing it, right? BMTC had this opportunity for the last how many ever years because they knew about for the last 10 years because we have been talking to them, I think, but they do realize the challenges with that, right? Because they have ad hoc operations. And if you think about the circle of public transport, it starts with planning, right? And you get into operationalizing the plan, and then you have performance measures to check it. You always fail, and then you plan again, right? What we are missing is that planning point, right? And for the last 15 plus years, okay, Sustainable Urban Transport Project, probably in 2009, understood this issue. Now we talk about digital public infrastructure, but we understood that we need to have a UMTA, Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority. We want to have urban transport fund to ensure there is money for these things. We talked about each aspect of it, and we also talked about common fare cards, right? So if you look at Indian history, we do have this conversation happening for a while, but I would think this is the most exciting time ever. Mostly because we have been so successful with Aadhaar and UPI, I think that is sort of flowing over into the other areas, right? Now that people have implemented the Aadhaar and others, they're saying, okay, what can I do with this? And they're looking at mobility as a thing. And I also appreciate all the NGOs like the GIZ, WRI, ITDP, everybody also pushing on these things, right? So because of which we're talking about digital public infrastructure, there are always challenges, right? It's always to sudden improvements don't happen except in certain areas. And mobility, there are so many middlemen who make money out of it. So it takes some time to get there. But to answer your question, I would say that we are moving in the right direction. We do have some standards which are limited, like GTFS, for instance, cannot do well with operations, operational contracts. That's where Europe has gone to NetX and a few others. But it would be nice to adopt at least one of them and figure out our problems ourselves and try to improve it, rather than saying that, oh, this doesn't work. Very often the problem I see in India is we throw the beautiful baby along with the dirty bathwater, right? You have something working and something not working, you say, let me throw the whole thing away. I think if we get out of that thing, we'll find a lot of success in the next few years. Okay.
I had a question regarding contractual arrangements also, but I'll park it for now. Since you talked about the DPI part, right? Just one more question to you on ONDC, right? The ONDC network. I mean, earlier it was launched for commerce, but now they have significantly moved into mobility as well, right? They have been onboarding STUs and metros across the country. So how do you see the scaling up part of ONDC, and how does it impact our industry?
See, I think we are moving in the right direction. That's all I can tell you. And ONDC and Beacon, both of them are very positive, very customer-oriented stuff, right? Like, so we know ONDC has been very successful already. Beacon is an emerging protocol. It still needs to have more support from the government to make it the de facto standard, but they're very transaction-oriented. So that means that each agency can talk to, like the seller agency can talk to the Uber kind of organizations have no part to play in that. Olas have no part to play on that. So, but we do see that all these organizations like Beacon and ONDC and other stuff are here to stay, mainly because we already have the Aadhars and the UPI already happening, and because of which, and we are the largest in the world, right? We are proud of it. We are pushing the whole world into adopting. I look at it even for the African countries and everything. We are saying, hey, we have a successful model. Why don't you adopt it, right? What that is going to do is that pride that is heavy, and sometimes it's ego that is going to drive you, right? We have ego on these parts, and we think we will get there. What we need to do as the next step is actually get the federated part of it, right? The BMTCs, all the government agencies that we have, BMRCL, everybody as part of some standard, and they have strong data, okay? And ideally from Indian because we know that they are not very interested in themselves, I would love for somebody to say, hey, some research institute is a data custodian for this, who ensures that that data is correct and it is in the open formats, right? IUDX is doing a great job of it, and things like that, right? We need more and more IUDX and stuff to ensure that this happens. Okay?
Do you think this custodian should be a government organization, or it could be a neutral third party?
Ideally, a research organization like IISc or IITs or somebody who have the integrity part. The previous person talked about it, the integrate, provenance, and trust. Those are the things that are important, right? It's easily questioned, so you got to have those organizations that can say, people can come and say, hey, you can trust me, right? Whatever I create is going to be correct. It's not going to be changed. So the three parts that he was talking about, we need to do that. And that cannot be done by government or private organizations necessarily, in my opinion. Some people will gain that, right, over time. But if you want short-term things, I think research institutes are better placed on that part alone. But in terms of the data exchange and other things, research institutes are not very good, right? So it's only the checks and balances that probably the research institutes get into.
Great. So when we talk about DPI, see, of course, mobility is a sector, but right, we have applications of such infrastructure in other sectors as well, right? So how do we apply a intersectoral approach, right? Because if you see right now in mobility, there's a lot of push towards going carbon neutral, or there are net zero targets along the line, and government of India has been pushing a lot of electric vehicles, right? It's an evolving market as well, and it's very closely related to mobility as well, right? And Deepak is here. He's worked a lot in energy sector. So probably my next question would be to Deepak, that how do you see the application of these digital public infrastructures, for example, to integrate electric vehicles, into the system, because you see fragmentation is not only in mobility sector, right? In energy sector, if you'll see a lot of these OEMs, right? Everybody has their own format of charges. Even Tesla, if you'll see, they are building their own ecosystem. So everybody wants to build their own ecosystem. They want to keep their customers with themselves. So the problem of standardization exists there also. So how do you see that we using DPI can solve that, and whether we are moving in the right direction and we are doing some things which can improve the ecosystem in future?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, all. So I think, the familiar trope about the electricity system that we have, just taking a subset of overall energy, is that today if Edison were to come out from his grave, he wouldn't see anything different. But, that is beginning to change. We are seeing a lot of digitalization that is happening. The concept of prosumers coming in where, people having rooftop solar in their own house, injecting electricity back into the grid while at the same time consuming if, there is a cloudy day, for instance. So in such a scenario, I think, since Narendra, you mentioned about cross-sectoral linkages, yes, EVs do form the connective tissue between the two sectors. And you very, very rightly said that, data fragmentation and people wanting to have their own standards, it has been a long drawn issue, particularly with the era of smart meters that began over the last decade, where attempts to, do this remote meter reading. You had this bunch of meter manufacturers having their own standards, their own. So ultimately, over time, the governments have also realized that standardization is essential, and you need to have at least while they may have their own infrastructure, local algorithms and all, but ultimately, when information comes at a utility level, and let's not forget that in the energy sector, the amount of fragmentation and the sort of multiple agencies competing, like say an Uber or Ola, that is still some way away. The sector rules and regulations still give a lot of power to the utilities to be part of it. So ultimately there is that sort of aggregator. Of course, with laws changing, we may see retail coming into the sector, which is when we might end up with a lot of issues that are there in the transport segment as well. But just speaking about the present, I think the sector itself is undergoing a paradigm shift. How do you integrate all these distributed renewable energy sources? Yes, there is utility for these large-scale solar and wind farms, but increasingly consumers are also realizing the power and benefit of also having distributed systems under their own operations. And in some of the markets which are also matured, they are also looking at revenue generation options. The system operator is also looking at, these consumers are also people who can provide, emergency support to the grid at times of need. So this is where EV tends to fit in. For instance, as a load, and as a way of clearing up, local pollution within a city, that definitely it plays a role. But at the same time, when you find that a grid needs support, you can find that EVs come in as your batteries, and subject to the right amount of regulations and market structures, they can also inject power into the grid. Similar to concept called vehicle to grid. So I think looking at these assets which are going to be significantly more distributed, the need for visibility over the availability of power, because as much as we want our energy sources to be perpetual, the sun only shines during certain times of the day, the wind only blows at certain points of time. So keeping all these constraints in mind, the need to also balance storage, and unlike other commodities, electricity needs to be in constant balance. So that being said, therefore, visibility on all these assets, their operations, their schedulability, control, I think that's where a lot of digitalization plays a role. And given the multiplicity of vendors, standardization is essential, I would say, because these are all split-second decisions. So if it's not standardized, you are going to spend that much more time, and it can push your system into instability.
Before I go to Cornelia, because you talked about different vendors, right, being present in the ecosystem, maybe a question to any of you can pick it up. Lot of discussion was around UEI, right, Unified Energy Exchange, and I would like to ask this from consumers' perspective, that how does UEI help, at least if I'm a consumer and I have an electric vehicle, right, and I'm looking for charging my vehicle, and of course I have a particular OEM that I have to look for, but UEI, how does that make me probably find charges of other OEMs, or is that even scope of UEI? Because I'm asking this from a consumer's perspective. If you can explain how does that help bringing this ecosystem together?
Okay, maybe I'll take a first stab and then pass it over to you. So I feel that one, of course, locating where compatible chargers are is there. But let's say if I am also a conscious consumer who wants to ensure that my vehicle is charged through renewables. So, if you can build a layer on the existing UEI infrastructure, looking at which are the charging stations which are powered through renewable energy. It could be on-site, or it could be somebody who has contracted, from, some other wind or solar generator elsewhere. So, trying to, identify those smoothly. At the same time, also having information about, at, let's say, now it's about 4 p.m. So let's say at 7 p.m., if I have advanced information of, what the grid situation is going to be like, I can, think of maybe taking advantage of solar prices being low now, and then at a later point, looking at the possibility of earning some revenue by, getting my vehicle to feed electricity into the grid. So having a sense of what that market situation is going to be like could be some of the applications from a consumer perspective.
I mean, I think one of the things that while we develop a lot of data exchanges, and see, many times I think most of the problems are very common across these different sectors. So you can almost the same problem can exist for another sector. So I think one approach which may be good, which may apply for even energy sector, and maybe that's the question I would like to ask, that is there anything specific for energy? Generally, what we say is that, okay, a data exchange is going to solve a certain problems for you. So those certain problems, like a minimum set, is something that we have tried to standardize or maybe built into a core. So this is like discoverability, then there will be an authorization, like who gets the data, and finally it's the data service. The data service can keep expanding, like in the sense that, okay, we can have GTFS as the feed coming into you, real-time feed that's coming into you, or when we talk about geospatial, maybe we work with OGC. In general data structured form, we talk about NGSILD, things like that. But I think in general, that's the way we think of an exchange, and we are able to take it to the different sectors also. And we haven't found, and like we started with urban, then we seamlessly moved into, say, agriculture, or now we are going to look into health also, where there are some new requirements come in, which is about privacy and confidentiality. But other than that, I think that exchange principles stay the same. So I feel that the problems also that an exchange can solve will remain similar to, like, it is breaking silos. And on top of it, yes, each domain you have to give, see, that is where I think everybody will not run for making their own standard, is if you take a layered approach. If you take a layered approach and you say, look, this is the core infrastructure part. That's what I think Peter was saying, pre-competitive. So I think we should, if we are trying to make a shared infrastructure, we should stay in the pre-competitive stage, and we should have enough playing field for the people who are in that domain, who can bring in their own differentiation, right? Then if we do it that way, then I think we'll be able to build a core infrastructure. Not everybody will have to build it, and then everybody in that domain spends time on the things that they can provide differentiation with.
Just want to add to that, silos help monopolies. It doesn't help consumers ever, right? The only place where it can is if it's not sustainable, right? The open data and stuff, if there's no financing, like the AI that we're talking about, there's no financing mechanism and the whole thing falls down, then there is a challenge with that. Otherwise, generally silos help monopolies, so it's good to have this open data. And what we have also seen is it helps a lot more people to get into the area, and everybody benefits from that. Okay.
Sometimes when we work with cities and we talk about open data, right? One of the very common questions that we get that why do we open our data, right? Without a monetary exchange, right? For example, I think I remember you working in Tamil Nadu, right? And we were pushing them that they should publish their schedules and route information and everything on an open data portal, and they were very adamant, and they were like, why do we give our data for free?
That's exactly what we don't say, that it's an open data. You say it's a data which is always available. Now, what terms and conditions could be monetary, or it could be some other terms and conditions. It could be like value based. I am providing value to a city, but it's not open. It's like under authorization, and the provider should be given enough control. You give data to whoever, but do make it available on the portal. So if somebody is interested with whatever is your terms and conditions, it should be given to them. But it's not open, it's not free.
Correct. Okay, moving on. So my question to Cornelia. Cornelia, you're working for GIZ, right? You're working for a development corporation. You are also a funding agency. You work with a lot of cities. You are also working with central government, right? And when we are talking about DPI, right, it's very important that people in government also realize this, and they are also skilled enough to put some effort so that initiative like this goes on. So, in your opinion, how do you see and how do funding agencies or development corporations like GIZ can help the government to realize this goal, right? And also because private sector also is an important stakeholder in this, right? In building a DPI, and you are also working with government and private both. So how do you see this whole ecosystem playing out, and how do you think an organization like GIZ can help out?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I'm very honored to be here. Although I'm not a data specialist, yeah. I'm working for GIZ, yes, and most probably you know it. I don't know if the audience knows it. GIZ is a government-to-government organization, so we are always working with government through the central government, and I think this is important to know in this context, because it's a very different approach when I work with private sector, with commercial companies, or with government, because this determines also what we can do and what we cannot do. Maybe to come to your question, yes, when we work with central government, for example, with MOHUA or with MHI in the case of e-mobility, we see government tends, not only in India, everywhere, to be the umbrella above it, but how does it come down to the cities, to the local level in India, in the federal system, in between the states? So there has to be a good agreement there. This we call the horizontal integration. Yeah. So how can we deal with this? That from standards, you spoke about standards and so on. Standards are going from the top to the local level without losing all the stakeholders, because when they hear MOHUA wants this or MHI wants this, of course the local government would say, no, we do our own thing. Yeah, we are independent, we want to have our own thing. And this brings very often a problem. When I speak GIZ, we are also, we are mainly working in capacity development and multi-stakeholder engagement, etc. So this is our main focus. And this is, so I want to bring the human aspect into the discussion a little bit, because besides developing tools, apps, very interesting technologies, yeah, the human aspect is also mainly relevant in in capacity building for cities, capacity building also on other levels, which brings is very important. And when you look in cities who try, smart cities who try to really do an integrated approach in mobility, they set up, let's say, something like a committee or a hub with very diverse stakeholders, operators, policymakers, politicians, civil society organizations, just normal inhabitants, maybe not, as Peter said, dogs, but yeah. So it should be a very diverse group with a mandated, with mandates, so that they can make decisions. Because otherwise, a lot of things land in the, we always say, in the bookshelf in the end, yeah. And this would be sad. What we do here in India for the transport sector, I mean, it's a small portfolio of, in the moment, I think only 2 projects, but in the future we will have probably 5 to 6 projects. And what we do, we of course work through the central government, but then work with the states and with the cities. And the central government, together with our ministry, decides on which locations we are working. Yeah? And what we do is really to pilot approaches, try to get them a little bit more sustainable, which is sometimes very difficult, exactly because the matter of trust, yeah, do we trust this system? How can we prove that this system is really bringing us the advantages which I said? And yeah, I think there's projects are always much too short to solve this problem, but we can do for a certain while, we call it hand-holding with the cities, and so that they can implement the things. Of course, academia plays a crucial role in the work, because we need the technologies, we need the support from academia to do this.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma, we were talking about standards like GTFS, right? But when you talk about mobility, there is an aspect of multimodality also that comes in, right? It's not only public transport services that we are talking about. These days, you see micro-mobility services also coming in, right? We have the scooters and Ola, Ubers, whatnot. So how do you address this complexity? Like, how do we evolve our standards? Because GTFS probably is not enough, then we'll need more standards. So how do you see embracing this challenge as part of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is fairly clear to the community, and I think there are a couple of, again, I think standards is the way to go, or at least there has to be a de facto standard like GTFS that will come out. So I think GTFS is an open community. I think they have come up already. I think they are coming with GTFS Flex, which is already there. I think people are using it. But there are a couple of more very interesting things. I think there's a standard called MDES. I think it works on this micromobility. So I think there is a standardization effort. I think even this NetX and CD have combined, have a roadmap for this. I think the current issue is again that now it's till there is a clear winner. How do you go? And are these standards reconcilable to each other? See, I know NetX, CD, and GTFS have tried a lot, and they were able to at one point achieve some kind of a conceptual reconciliation. So I think something like that has to be achieved, because till that point, at least as developers, we are going to be confused because we don't know which one to pick up. We'll try, and then yeah, but the space will remain fragmented for some time till there is some kind of a de facto winner that comes out. But at least the good thing is there are standards coming up and on the ground. Yeah.
Do you also think awareness is an issue, especially city administrations, and probably is the reason why they are a bit skeptical about moving towards?
I wouldn't say there is too much of an issue in the sense that, see, CT is not going to go ahead and say, I'm going to work with GTFS. They're going to work with a vendor, or they're going to work with an SI. And I don't think awareness is an issue with an SI. So I think the issue is where the standards are not there. So for example, that's what I said, GTFS, I think now once they say GTFS, SI will pick up GTFS. But there is no standard on the side of, say, operators. So then at that point, different people will go ahead and build their own APIs. So that is where the issue starts to come in. So once there is a standard which is popular, for which SIs do get vendors, SI do get things, then I think then it should not be a problem.
Professor, since we are talking about vendors, right? Every city has multiple vendors, right? They'll have one vendor for ATM, one vendor for GPS, right? And they'll have lock-in issues, right? Organization like us, if we are going to work with them, sometimes it's very difficult to get the data out of these vendors because sometimes there are payment issues that, the payments are pending, so they'll not give the data. Issues are there. Now, is it possible for central government to come out with a circular or a standard that, and I'm talking this especially in regard to ITS systems that are being deployed, right? That if you are to hire a ETM vendor or a GPS vendor, this is the contractual template that you have to follow, and this is the standard of data that you have to collect in. And this is to all the cities, not in a particular city, because it's not happening. So what do you think is the reason, and whether do you think it's possible, and whether it's a solution, or is there another way out?
Before Vijay says, I want to just chime in. That we have tried and it doesn't work. Even if you get a circular, it doesn't work. Like, I don't know, Suresh is sitting here. He has got a circular from many departments, down from up, down to the down. Not able to get the data.
So maybe what's the way out?
No, so his point is right? And anybody who worked as long as I have in this area are extremely frustrated, right? There's a reason why I moved to academia, because we thought, but I will put it this way, I'm a big believer in tipping point. And I do think that we're getting closer and closer to the tipping point. Recently, we had a ASRTO workshop, which is basically the Association of All State Transport Undertaking. And we had 23 agencies with all of them more than 2,000 buses. So all the major agencies in the country. And we were more or less moderating it. Okay. So we had a few presentations on who's doing what on ITS and stuff. And a lot of the conversation was between them, right? Who's doing what are the problems? And it was very heartening. Okay. Generally, it is used to be disheartening. It was very heartening to hear them because they're all thinking about some of this. And when we talked about GTFS and we said we'll help them create it, they were open to it. Okay. The challenge that we keep running into even today is that the use cases are not there. The performance measures are not there. What the government needs to do in every place is they need to, like FTA, for instance, in US does this, is the funding happens on certain performance measures, not on revenue, right? It's more on ridership and certain things that. So you say that, hey, tell before the year starts, what are you going to achieve? What ridership? Then ask for the funding, right? But achieving that ridership. So we got to change the paradigm a little bit. But every time we try it, naturally there's a lot of resistance because people right? At this point of time, nobody's questioning them. They have their jobs. But at some point of time, it needs to be a little more competitive, but we are moving in the right direction. Okay.
I think some bit of a, sorry to chime in, but again, I think a bit of a policy and a human thing has to be worked out here, because I think it need not always be monetary. I think right knobs, right incentives have to be given.
I want to chime in there. One of the best projects in India was the Sustainable Urban Transport Project, where World Bank actually they had a capacity, multiple capacity building measures written. And at that point, GIZ had also created multiple documents in India. And they also took people from here. Until then, only the IAS officer used to go to the other countries. They took mid-level people and others to other countries to show them. Okay, there's a huge capacity building effort that happened. More than 1,000 or 2,000 CEPT was anchoring it and all that. What we have seen is almost immediately after the people went to wherever they went, some went to South Korea, some went to Bogota, London, various places, they come back, they get transferred out. Okay? And that doesn't help, right? That was been one of the big challenges in government. You got to say that if you go to this, you have a contract to stay in the same place for 3 years or something like that. I think then we can get because they do see it and they see the value and they say, why can't it be like this? Okay? Because I was on one of the trips and I could see the people's attitude saying that we can do better. Okay? But they're not there long enough to really implement that.
Maybe Cornelia, there is a queue there. for organization like GIZ to work more on capacity building programs, right? But yeah.
Yes, maybe I also think that the approach to look from the standards, yeah, I mean, the government cannot say this is now the standard and you all follow. Nobody will do that. Probably, especially in India, as far I'm 1 year here now, and I see it's very difficult to enforce things. Yeah, so but also in Germany it would be the same issue. Therefore, I think the schemes, because the government has many schemes, they can link it to this, and it's a slow process. We shouldn't be too impatient with this. Yeah, this is a slow process, and link it to incentives, to schemes, to anything what on local level has to be implemented. I think that can be at least one screw in the whole picture. Yes, and capacity building we are continuing. Yeah.
Okay, since we already are in a very last stage, we only have 5 more minutes. Maybe I would encourage people in the audience to ask some questions if they have. I already see a hand there. If we can get a mic there. Maybe you'll just ask your question. I think we can hear it.
Sure. So thank you very much to all of you for a very enlightening discussion. So my question is, when you look at the applications of digital public infrastructure, right? It seems to me that the outcomes, whether you're talking about a city with flood resilient logistics, or an outcome like less air pollution, or an outcome like decarbonization, or an outcome like less traffic, these are all things which are not market driven, but are actually things which require corrections, because somebody is bearing the cost, and it's not counted, it's externalized in some way. So my question is very simple. If we're missing the killer apps right now, should we, given that the global trend is that the US has pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and it's all self-driven contribution, so on and so forth, should we expect a time horizon of let's say 5 years or 10 years before these applications are really prioritized? Because if we build the infrastructure without the applications and the political will for the applications, I'm sure the infrastructure will be amazing, but that word outcomes over there may not actually connect to the activities. And this is just a question as somebody who's really interested in these things. Thank you so much.
Just so I'm clear, you're talking about the efficacy of use of these applications that are being built?
No, I'm talking about the fact that the current discussions which I've seen have been about things like end-to-end mobility and so on and so forth, very market-driven. However, if you look at resilient outcomes, right, flood resilience is not a market outcome per se, or climate mitigation is not a market-driven outcome, or less air pollution is not something that the market will create by itself. So I may be wrong, but these things need policy correction. Maybe the person from WRI can help me more. My question is really, when will policy prioritize these outcomes so that this platform actually gets used for these applications? Is it now? Is it happening right now? Or is it in 5 years? Or do you think it will happen in 10 years? Especially in a post-US exit world where we cannot look to them for leadership on this.
So let me take, one is I think the market-driven interest is, for instance, we're talking about less traffic, right? There's a market interest in reducing your travel time. Okay, at this point of time, there's a reason a lot of people use the metro. Okay, not a very sustainable mode of transport, but it's a good mass transport, right? So to answer your question, it will start now. It already started and we are going to mobility as a service products are coming out. So at least on the transportation side, we are seeing more and more reliance on these, but it will grow at a very slow pace initially. And the whole point should be what you're saying. The strategy has to be 10 years from now, I should get 15%. What we do is somehow we think congestion will go away. Congestion is never going to go away if we still prioritize capacity, right? If we do prioritize travel demand management, then we can do better. Okay. So given that, the thought process needs to be that in another 5 years, I get to get 5% or 10% on this one. And during that time, more vehicles will coming through. So you got to say, hey, how do I look at, so it is a holistic look at everything. But timelines have to be 10 years, but it doesn't mean it doesn't start now. It started already because we do see a lot more people using public transport. We do see a lot of more people talking about, you recycle at home, right? More people are recycling than what we used to. So we're looking at all aspects of it. US being there or not doesn't matter because at some point of time, the climate affects people realize, okay, there's a set of people who don't want to, that look up movies there, right? They don't want to look up. But the rest of us know what is happening. And you'll still work on it even though your official political stance might be different. But at a personal level, I think you'll realize that.
Yeah, I can. So thanks. Great question, and I don't think I'll be able to give a very straightforward, panacea kind of answer. So I think energy as such, it is a wicked problem. The more you try to solve, something new crops up, which is unexpected. And I think as sectors also get interconnected, this wickedness is going to, spread into those as well. But I think policy, what the citizens need, what is the outcome level, achievements that we have to do. This is, technology alone. Technology is just an enabler, in my personal view. It cannot be the silver bullet to solve all these issues. And policy is a negotiated space. Initially, everyone has their own interests, and ultimately, for all that we are discussing, the straightforward or kind of most obvious answer seems to be find out what's in it for that person, so that you solve for it, and that if there is a common and critical mass, you mentioned tipping point, so that's where you reach that a tipping point. So whether it be flood resilient infrastructure or more adoption of public transport, how technology enables all this, when do policymakers respond to public demand? So if enough people are asking for it, participating in various ways of expressing their requirements in the political process through which messaging goes out to the policymakers, I think that's when actions starts to build, and it gains momentum. So it will take some time, no doubt. And though all technology and solutions may have in immense potential, and it might seem as to why isn't this being adopted right up front. Issues keep emerging here and there. Somebody who may be a powerful actor in the system is not finding that adoption of, let's say, X technology is helping them. So they will try to create roadblocks. So this is a politically negotiated space, and the political economy needs to be negotiated well for this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for those answers.
Thank you. I just see one more question. It's the last question probably.
As a novice in the IT sector, you have APIs which allow one software to talk to the other software, right? Similarly, in data exchanges, you mentioned a lot of standards being available, GTFS and many others that you named. Just as we have API connecting different softwares to talk to each other, can't we have in the data exchange where you have, say, data interface protocols that would allow one standard to talk to the other when different companies, for example, different SRTs send you data in different formats, that you can have one, say, mother standard to which all this can be mapped?
Yes, we can do that, but it becomes like it becomes unscalable if everyone is going to write their own formats. Then actually that's what we do. We write adapters many times to actually onboard your data, which is in different format. And if we are allowed to look into the data, we do write automated adapters to convert it into something common, a common ontology or a common base per se, right? So we do that. But I think it's like if there is an existing standard which you will like or I would agree to, somebody else agrees to, I think the question is why everybody should write in that so that we can save a lot of extra work that has to be done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to the answer, I think, for example, backend we talked about, right? So as far as say we were talking about ONDC also, as far as you are on the ONDC network, right, using backend protocol, different apps can talk to each other, right? So it doesn't matter which app you are on, you can access the services which are being offered on the different application, right? So I think that also partially is very close to what you are asking. Is a language where it's allowing different applications to talk to each other regardless of what services or they are providing. I think I'll stop this discussion here because we already are 3 minutes over the timeline. But thank you again, each of you. I would have probably loved to go one last round, but I think we are short on time, so I'll stop it here. And lastly, just thanking all the panelists for being here for this insightful discussion. And I think we have some mementos.
So thanks, Narendra, for this for leading the session. And now I'll invite my colleague Dr. Harita over to the stage. We have some tokens of appreciation for all of you, if you may. Yes, after this week. I have to check for the check. Please give them a round of applause. They're coming. Maybe they.